Well, I had mentioned before I was going to be setting up one of these turrets to do the Nagant, and that's what I have done. And it's a whole, separate one from the Tokarev one. So I can switch back and forth very easily. Don't even have to change shell holders. It's the same one. But, I've done videos on reloading for Nagant before, because it takes a particular crimp. And I have ran it before in my 3-hole turret. I've made a little change. But all the dice that I'm using, it says for Nagant, but it isn't for Nagant. This is that die set that they made to convert 3220. But, I've converted it back. And I happen to have a new one on hand, which was lucky because, I had complained before, and when I did that Tokarev one, I run into that problem of that riser, this piece in here, didn't fit in that Tokarev die. The threads are screwed up. Well, I ran into that again. I lucked out in that my old Tokarev, or my old Nagant, which is really a 3220 die, the threads in that were good, but the new one, they weren't. They work to put this piece in, this aluminum thread, but you can't screw the riser in to get the powder measure on. So that's a problem Lee evidently has on some of their newer dies that they should probably address. They're making it so these aluminum pieces will screw in, but the riser will not screw in. It isn't a problem with the riser, it's a problem with the die, the threads are cutting in the die. But on these die sets, the only real true Nagant die is the resizing die. The others are 3220, but it works. It worked quite well, really. And a lot of people, they consider the Nagant a kind of a novelty. For me, it's a better option than a 22. And these I'm loading now with the 311 cast bullet, but I did load a bunch of the 309 Hornady hollow points because I did some experimenting the other day shooting through the rear quarters on a roadkill deer, and I like the way that these hollow points work. They actually work very well. So I loaded a bunch of them up because they've got a little more impact to them. But normally I'm shooting these cast bullets. And this 3220 die, like we run it up in there now, it seats the bullet and crimps it. Puts that little crimp on. But the change I've made since I had another set of dies, I took another resizing die, same thing, and I put it in here to use to kind of smooth out any irregularities. After you've seated the bullet. So I'm actually using 2 sizing dies, but that works really well. It worked fine before, I didn't used to do it that way, but I figured as long as I had that other set, I would do it. But it's a quick way of making the Nagant ammunition. These dies are a little tricky, but see, I'm not fond of that primer. That whole primer mechanism is something I wouldn't mind revamping. Because not only is it hard to line up, but sometimes it doesn't really like to seat the primer. But you can see like the second die that I'm running, sizing die, I've got it set out quite a little bit further because I'm just trying to resize this area where the bullet is. But like I said, I run for a long time without doing that. Just making use of that fourth hole. You know, see, this thing is something that gives me fits though. Yeah. It certainly could be better. But I'll play around with that some. You know, I'm sure there's a way of making that work better. Otherwise, I got no complaints on this other stuff. Okay, and I got to go all the way around. I can crank them up. You know, part of the problem I run into sometimes when you first go to resize them, you know, like I say, I don't trust that cedar. The shell holder is the same as for the Tokarev, but it's not an ideal fit. You know, it's a little looser in there, but it's about as close as I can come. You know, because in theory, I don't know how to actually make one for this. But I do like the way that 3220 die will make that nice crimp. You know, it's not as severe a crimp as what, like the PPU stuff that comes from the factory. They've got a really severe crimp on that. But this is enough. See, there again is where that hair worked. So, all in all, it works. In fact, the next one I'm going to do, I've got everything set up to do a turret just like this for the Makarov, though I don't shoot the Makarov that awful much, only because it flings brass around. You know, that's why I tend to shoot the Nagant a lot, because, you know, revolver, I don't lose that brass. Plus, you know, heavy trigger pull, she's a safe gun. But next up will be the Makarov. But that takes a whole different bullet. You know, that's different than anything else in the world. But I do like the way these hollow points work. You know, I noticed before when I was playing with them that they're pretty accurate. They didn't work that well on the Tokarev, but they work really well on the Nagant. In the Tokarev, I'm better off with these. Those 85 grain 308s, they seem to work really well in the Tokarev. Though these casts were perfectly fine in there too. The only thing Tokarev, you know, is trying to go fast. And it certainly did when it went through that deer. I wasn't even going to be able to dig that one out of the frozen ground.